In the quiet mist of Iron Pine National Park, a man walked alone, not lost, but with purpose. What began as a routine trail inspection would unravel into a moment that challenged justice, identity, and the very idea of who belongs in America's wild spaces. This is not just a story of one man's silence broken. This is a reckoning, a story of dignity, defiance, and the trail he left behind for others to follow. The morning fog draped Iron Pine National Park in a thick silence. Trees stood like quiet witnesses, their leaves trembling under a cold wind. Elijah Brooks adjusted the strap of his rucksack and paused to take a breath. He was alone, but not lost. Every trail here, even the hidden ones, bore his fingerprint. At 47, Elijah wasn't just a veteran or a survival instructor. He was the mind behind the Summit Recovery Initiative, a project turning forgotten wilderness into sanctuaries for wounded warriors. The woods had once saved him from the war in his mind. Now, he was building paths for others to find that same peace. That morning, he was scouting a new trail designed for veterans with mobility issues. His pace was steady, boots sinking softly into pine needles, when a rustling sound behind him made him turn. Two park rangers approached. One was older, tall with a jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. The other, younger, still had uncertainty in his eyes. "You got a permit for being off trail?" the older one asked. Elijah reached calmly into his pocket, pulling out laminated credentials and trail maps. Elijah Brooks, contracted through the Department of the Interior. "I built this trail. Literally." The older ranger didn't even look at the papers. "Got a complaint. Said a suspicious man was out here in tactical gear. You fit the description." And that description is Elijah's voice stayed level, military style, off trail, black male. The younger ranger shifted uneasily. "I'm not here to argue," Elijah said, offering the documents again. "These are federal credentials, on the ground. Hands behind your back." There was a long pause. Elijah didn't move. "I am cooperating. You're making a mistake." But it was too late. Zip ties tightened around his wrists. The older Ranger Crane radioed in, possible poacher, detained. No Miranda rights, no questions, just suspicion. Elijah said nothing as they loaded him into the back of a parked vehicle. Silence weighed heavier than the mist outside. He knew what this was. It wasn't new. But he'd thought this trail, this mission, was sacred ground. When he failed to check in, Lauren Kim noticed immediately. She wasn't just his legal partner, she was his friend. A civil rights attorney with the Department of the Interior. She called the station. No answer. Called again. Stonewalled. She didn't wait. Within the hour, she arrived at Iron Pine with a press liaison and two federal marshals. Her eyes scanned the small ranger outpost like a blade. "Where is Elijah Brooks?" The rangers fumbled. Crane stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "You mean the suspect?" Lauren's voice was cool, but surgical. "The federal contractor who designed 3 of your hiking systems and holds 2 federal grants for veteran rehabilitation, that Elijah Brooks." The room fell silent. Crane tried to speak, but Lauren was already handing out paperwork. Unlawful detainment, civil rights violation, illegal search and seizure. Oh, and obstruction. The younger ranger, Emerson, paled. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He looked at Elijah, then at Lauren. Then, something cracked in him. "He told me to ignore the ID," Emerson said suddenly. "Said most forged those things anyway." "I didn't know." Crane's voice barked. "You're out of line." Lauren turned, eyes locked on Crane's. "You made one fatal mistake. You thought nobody was watching, but Elijah's been watched his whole life. This time, the world will see." The following days unfolded like a storm. A camper's phone footage surfaced online. Elijah, calm, restrained, led away like a criminal. The public outcry was immediate. Veteran groups demanded answers. Social media churned. Elijah, as always, said little. Just one statement: I'm not shocked. I'm just done being silent. The lawsuit hit federal court within weeks. Lauren led the case with surgical precision. But the trial became more than legal argument. It became a reckoning. Witness after witness spoke. A Latino Marine recounted being detained by Crane for taking pictures near a scenic overlook. An Asian American botanist described being followed during a nature class. Each story built the weight of truth until the courtroom could hardly bear it. But it was Elijah's testimony that silenced the room. He stood, not to rage, but to recount. I walked those trails with my brother's ashes in my pack, built them with men who couldn't walk without pain. They needed hope, and I needed them. I came here to serve, but to you, I was still a threat. He turned to the jury. You can't legislate trust, but you can hold people accountable when they betray it. The final blow came when Judge Antonia Harris, herself a Navy veteran, asked Crane directly if Mr. Brooks had been white, same papers, same uniform, would you have zip-tied him? Crane's jaw worked. Then came the silence. Long, heavy, damning. The jury returned unanimous. Elijah won. $1.2 million in damages. Mandatory bias training for all park officers. Crane was fired. Emerson, having testified against him, was placed under mentorship and eventually reassigned. But Elijah didn't keep the money. He stood before the press and announced the creation of the Summit Brotherhood Trust, a nonprofit offering wilderness therapy and leadership training for marginalized veterans. This wasn't about the money, he said. It was about the weight of always being seen as something you're not. I want that weight lifted for the ones who come next. Months later, a photograph made its way to the cover of Outdoor Integrity magazine. Elijah stood at the head of a training group in Iron Pine. Rangers and veterans alike gathered around him. His smile was quiet, his eyes clear. The caption read, "From suspect to shepherd, how one man redefined the trail." And deep in the woods of Iron Pine, where the mist still gathered in the mornings, new trails were being carved not just through trees, but through something harder, the assumptions we carry, and the ones we finally learn to set down.